Today is Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. My name is Jackie Pelota, and I'm here today interviewing Celeste Velazco for the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know that this interview will be placed in the Nettie Lee Benson Latin American Collection at UT Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. Because we're not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting. So I'll ask you a series of 5 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. There are 2 questions, though, that we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. Voces wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation at the Benson Library at UT Austin. We will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to Voces. Do you give Voces consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Benson Library? Can you repeat that? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Just want to make sure. This is super important that we have this part. Do you grant Voces copyright over the interview and any material you provide?
Yes, I do.
Do you agree to allow us to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. So we have many questions in the pre-interview form that we have already filled out. We use that information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server. Before we send it to the Benson, we would have stripped out any contact information from yourself or family members. So that's not going to be a part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the Benson Library. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at the Benson? Sorry, can you repeat that? Okay, cool.
Too low, is that it? Or is it just a connection?
I think it might just be going too low, which is typically fine. But with these things that it's different when we're in person, like I want to make sure that it's very clear.
Okay.
On occasion, Voces receives requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone number or your email with journalists?
No.
Thank you. Awesome. So thank you for bearing with me for that. I know it's a very long preamble, so thank you for your patience. But Celeste, if you can maybe start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so Celeste. I'm originally from Venezuela, born and raised. I came to the United States in 2014, so I was 16 years old at the time. I'm currently a student in the University of Florida. I'm studying advertising and political science and minoring in French. I don't know, what else is there to say about me?
Are you a full-time student? Are you a part-time student? Do you do anything else outside of school?
I'm a full-time student. I work 2 jobs currently. I used to work 3. And other than that, I just tried, like over the summer since COVID, I've been trying to do and to develop other skills, to learn new things, just trying to get into creative design. So try to do stuff like that. I sell stickers as a leisure thing, kind of brings me a little bit of money monthly. So that's fun. But other than that, currently there's not much to do. So
3 jobs is a lot. Has any of your work been impacted by COVID? You know, have you had to change what work looks like? Have hours been cut? Have you had to switch jobs?
So one of my jobs, I work at George Smathers Libraries for UF, and I used to be a student assistant, so just kind of working the desk, shelving books, helping patrons with everything they needed. And because of COVID, that obviously wasn't a possibility anymore. And luckily, I had the chance of working from home. So I've been doing social media for the specific branch that I'm in, which is the Latin American Caribbean collection. So just kind of creating posts, and it's kind of difficult because obviously we don't have the opportunity to go into the stacks, take pictures, talk to people about what we're saying. So it's kind of like a longer process of having to email whoever it's the person related to what you're trying to promote, and then wait for the response and make it, I guess, more official than just having like small talk in the hallway. Um, so for one part is that like there's the difficulty of creating content without having the accessibility to that content in a specific. So we have to promote more digital collections, create our own graphics that maybe they don't do as well as having actual pictures of people. But grateful always that I had been with the opportunity of working from home. And my other job also moved from home. So again, since I'm in this industry or field that is marketing related, that is social media related, I've been granted with these possibilities. Again, the same difficulties of not being able to maybe use pictures that have large groups, that have gatherings of people. But other than that, it's just been working from home.
How has that been working for you? You know, how logistically, how has your routine changed, and just, you know, how have you felt kind of just staying in one place for long periods of time?
I guess it has its perks and disadvantages. In the perk side is I don't have to wake up early for the bus. I don't have to bother about meal prepping and taking it to UF. But at the same time, like I'm a very extroverted person. I like to talk to people. I like even just being Hispanic, like hugging people, saying hi to people, like just having those random conversations with people that you just see in the office. And not having that definitely has been a challenge for me because I don't have my roommates here. I haven't been able to see most of my friends. A lot of friends go down south. So just not having the possibility of like actual human interaction, like I think I've seen more Publix employees than anyone else in my life in these past 3 months. Um, so I think that's been the biggest challenge for me. And if you want to talk to someone, then it's like you have to set up a meeting with them or like ask them if they have a little bit of time to talk to you. And like everyone is going through a lot of things, you know, like mentally and physically. If you have kids, if you are a person who also doesn't like being enclosed, so it's kind of like, am I bothering you? Can we talk? It's not the same as just seeing them. Um, but at the same time, it's like I'm home, I'm more comfortable. I guess I don't have to dress nice all the time, wear makeup. And if I just want to go make lunch randomly, then I can do that. But I think after like I guess I didn't expect this to be for this long. So at the beginning, I was like, okay, perfect. Like I don't have to go take the bus. I don't have to go out and do stuff. But at this point, it's like, can I please go do something outside of my house?
So you said that you see more Publix grocery store employees. Is there anything else that you have, you know, tried to do outside of, you know, staying home, or what have you seen when you have gone out, specifically in Gainesville? You know, what do you observe? How are people acting? Things like that.
So I go mostly to Publix because I don't have a car. So I don't want to take an Uber. Like that's risky as well. So I just walk to Publix, and it's kind of shocking, I guess, because I wear my mask, I wear gloves, I try not to be around people, I try not to touch too much. Like I'm just touching what I'm grabbing, like what I know I'm gonna buy. But then you see a lot of people not wearing masks, not wearing gloves, like not carrying. I had to go to the mall once because I needed to return something that like I had to, like I had my window of time, and I had to ask something to the employer and to the employee, and she just came so close to me, and she was wearing a mask, but still, it's like we still have to keep 6 feet away. Like you can answer my question from over there. So it's just like I guess like if you're young, because we got so much information from the media when it first started. So we think that because we're young, it's not gonna affect us. But actually, I have a friend who's 25 years old. She doesn't smoke. She doesn't drink as much, like just really sugary. And she got COVID, and she had to go to Shands, the hospital in Gainesville, and she had to stay for a week. And it's crazy because again, she's only 3 years older than me. She can be seen as low risk, and she still had trouble breathing. She still has to stay in the hospital for a week. And I just, again, it's shocking that so many people are not paying attention to this, that so many people are just like, I'm not gonna wear a mask, I can't breathe. And it's like, you're gonna be in the grocery store for 30 minutes. It's really not that hard to wear the mask. But other than that, I guess I haven't gone anywhere else, like to the office in my apartment complex, to pick up packages, and they require that you wear a mask, which I think is great. I've tried working out outside, but it's just weird because I'm alone, I'm a female, I'm small. Like I don't want to think about the possibilities that could happen to me if I was to spend too much time outside in the street. So it's just been that in Publix, and that's it.
Wow, so that's crazy that you said that your friend ended up being COVID positive. So how, based on your connection with her, how was that experience like? Were you afraid for your safety based off of, like contact tracing, or how was that?
I didn't see her when all of this happened. Like I hadn't seen her in a while. So I knew that I wasn't infected. And at the same time, I seen a lot of people bar hopping, going to restaurants, just not caring. And I'm not like that. Like even when bars started opening or restaurants, I was like, I don't feel safe. Like even just ordering takeout was like, I don't know, like this seems risky. And at this point, I'm not ordering food just because of how many cases we have in Florida. But with my friend, like I was definitely worried just because of that thought of like having, because I guess at the beginning, like you don't know anyone, right, that has COVID. And you're like, oh yeah, like that person, or like you see it on Twitter or you hear about it on Facebook, but you don't actually have a direct connection to COVID. And then hearing that a close friend of mine had it was like shocking. And at the beginning, it's like obviously she had to get tested, and it was 8 to 10 days. So it was like it's a lot of time to be waiting, and for you to actually have to stay home, not having any contact with anyone, just in case you infect them. And then she started developing symptoms, and that's when she was like, well, I have to go. And when she went to the hospital, that's when they tested her again, and the results came faster, and she was positive. And I just kept texting her just in case something happened. Like, and in her experience, she couldn't have any visitors, so of course I couldn't go and see her, and just in case something happened. But it was just like, I guess we FaceTime, and that was it. Like, what else can you do when someone has it? So again, like I just kept texting her, and at the end she was able to leave the hospital, go to her home, and she felt better. And I guess like it's also good that she was in Gainesville because she has a lot of clinical trials, so that obviously helped her with her progress. But I don't want to think like, what if she was down south, like in Miami, where there's so many cases, and at this point, so many hospitals don't have any beds anymore. Like this happened a month ago when we didn't have as many cases as we have now.
Wow, yeah. And so did this happen like during the semester, or had the semester already ended? Because I know, most universities, it was kind of a little over halfway into the semester, they transitioned to, mostly remote. And so did this happen while you all were still, mainly on campus?
It happened in June, so no, it was
No.
all remote already.
Okay. So I guess my next question is how did it feel, transitioning from campus, when you first realized that this was going to be a something significant, and just what did that process and experience look like for you?
It was definitely stressful. Like on my side, all my classes were online already because of the decision that I made at the beginning of the semester. So I wasn't stressful because of my classes, but I saw a lot of students getting, because not everyone is conditioned to have remote learning, to have online classes. So just seeing that, I was like, I feel bad for you. For me, I didn't have that experience, but when it comes to jobs, it was definitely like, what is going to happen now? Like, how is this going to look? Again, in the spring semester, I was working 3 jobs. One of them, the other one that I didn't mention, was also with the libraries, doing social media for the general libraries account. So before everything started, we had to like plan ahead and be like, okay, what are the deliverables of this semester? Like, what is what else do we have to get done for you to finish the job? So he was like, okay, we have to take pictures, we have to talk to people, we have to, and at the same time, you have to take the precautions, right? Because you had the possibility of still seeing people in person, but there wasn't like those measures of wearing masks. So I was like wearing sanitizer, like using hand sanitizer every 2 seconds, and like trying not to touch too many things. And people just like looking at me like crazy, but I was like, I'm not gonna risk it. So it was just like that, like just a stressful situation of like, okay, we have to get things done. We have to make sure that everything is ready for you when you start working from home. So on that job, like perfect. And then for that job in specific, I had a presentation at the end, just kind of explaining everything that I did for the semester. And it was kind of sad and good at the same time because the presentation was supposed to be in person. So it was like kind of uncomfortable for me to just like see a bunch of people on Zoom and just kind of explain everything to them. But it was also the perk that my family was able to be on that presentation. So it just made me happy that like that was a possibility, because if it was in person, that wouldn't have been the case. For my other jobs, again, it was stressful. Like, am I gonna still have a job? Like, because it was the ending of spring semester. Like, I think we only had like 1 month left of classes. And I was like, am I gonna have these jobs for the summer? What's gonna happen? Like, am I still gonna get hired? How is that gonna work? And are we gonna come back for the summer? So there were a lot of questions that you ask yourself, and that probably your employer is asking themselves too, and that they don't have the answer, but you have to ask them. It's like, I'm not trying to put more stress on you, but I have these doubts. And I'm lucky enough that all my employers were very communicative with me. They were very proactive on everything that had to be answered and everything that had to be done. But I know that other people had a lot of rescinded job offers, internships. But yeah, it was definitely a challenge. It was a process. But I guess like we're adaptable. And I feel like when you're an immigrant and you go through the whole process of like moving to another country, you kind of become more flexible with things, and you kind of become easy, like you adapt easier to environments that might not be ideal. So I feel like just because of the experience that I've gone through, this situation wasn't as hard for me as it might have been for other people.
And so you mentioned that I guess your main concern through the transition was like job related. And so as a follow-up, have you seen any sort of impact, financially due to just the changing nature of what COVID has done to what work looks like for you?
Personally, I think not. And I'm gonna say this because due to the current situation, I've been put in a position where I've been able to save money just because I'm not going out, I'm not going to restaurants, I'm not going to Starbucks every morning and buying a $5 coffee. Just those type of situations like allowed me to save a lot of money. And because of everything that was happening, and like I saw everyone going through the crisis and like not getting the jobs, and me not being able to say like, oh yes, I'm gonna have a job in July, like for sure. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna spend money. So I was like I was limiting myself a lot on like groceries. I wasn't buying like clothes. I wasn't buying anything that it wasn't extremely necessary. And because of that, I'm not in a situation where I'm like, I don't have enough money to survive until like December, to say that.
And you said just the fact that you've been able to, continue to work remote, I'm sure that has helped a lot, based off of what, maybe from friends or, other coworkers, other colleagues. Do you find like most student employees have been able to continue to work from home, or do you find, they've been financially impacted by COVID?
I think it's the second option. Most of my friends either work retail, or they work in the libraries, or they work other jobs that you can't perform remotely. So either they've been forced to find jobs in retails that are opening, risking their lives clearly, or they've just been staying at home. And I guess some of us, or some of them, have the possibility or have the option of being financially supported by their parents, but some of us don't. So that was like my thing, that I don't have the possibility. So of course I do have to continue working, and I didn't want to risk my life doing retail. So I had the possibility, but most of my friends definitely, like, they worked in the mall and the mall closed. So they were out of jobs, and at least they qualify for the unemployment check. But I heard even from professors that say, like, I heard a lot of students that don't have experiences this summer that had jobs and internship offers, and they got rescinded and they can't do anything else because a lot of industries are not hiring.
Yeah, and for students that have been financially impacted, have you seen any sort of communication or responses by your university or by the community to kind of help support students, since Gainesville is very much a college town, and so what have you seen kind of that response look like?
So when it comes to financial aid, I've seen a lot of grants and other aids for students, which is great. And I received some of them, so that, like, it helped me a lot. And I heard, like, other on Facebook groups, like, people talking about it. So I'm glad that some of them have been able to get some of that money. However, I think the most challenging thing right now for college students, especially for US students, is the whole rent process. So of course, since apartment complexes are not affiliated to UF, then they're not canceling the leases. But if UF is going to do online, if you're not going to come back for the fall, or even just right now in the summer semester, then why would you be paying for an apartment that you're not going to use? So it's a lot of talk right now, and that's definitely a lot of money that goes in, that you have to spend monthly in a place that you're not going to be using, that you're not going to be living in. So I think most of that, like, even though we're receiving this help from UF, I think at the end of the day, students have stress, financial stress, just to think about their apartments. And it's not like you can easily find someone to sublease it because there's no one coming. Like, everyone is in the same situation. Like, if you go to the Facebook group, there's so many people trying to sublease their apartments, and no one is taking them.
And so you started kind of talking about, I guess, the transition to fall. And so, based off of the communication you've received from university, and just, I guess, the way that Florida is trending right now, public health wise, what are your thoughts and feelings about what fall might look like for you as a student?
So as of right now, all my classes are online, which I'm so grateful. One of my jobs already told me that it's going to be remotely. The other one most likely will be in person. However, I don't think I'm going to have that much contact with students. But just thinking, like, as a general bubble of UF, I do not think that we should be opening, because there's still a lot of classes that are happening in person. Like, there's chem labs or bio labs or big classes, and they're gonna be outside. And it's like, well, do we all know Florida weather? Like, how are these going to be outside if it's raining or if it's so hot? And then it's not only the students, that's the thing. Like, for example, the libraries are gonna open, and I'm gonna talk about the libraries because that's my personal experience, but they're going to open. And we don't have a clear sense of who's going to be in the entrances asking students to wear masks, or asking students to be 6 feet away. So is this going to be the librarian's job? And are the librarians going to get paid extra for that? Are they risking their lives clearly by asking students to wear their masks, or anyone who's going to come into the libraries? So what are we doing for the librarians, for staff members, to make them feel safe? And at the same time, it's like a lot of them have children, and they have to worry about their children going to school, if that's going to happen, which probably will. That's another conversation about teachers not getting paid enough, not having enough material for students. And if they go back to school, then there's more probabilities of them getting sick and then going back. Like, it's a whole cycle. There's a lot of things that I feel like we're not thinking about, we're not taking into consideration. And then if the students don't, like, if their children don't go to school, then they obviously can't go to work. So it's just like, it's a lot that it's a lot of pressure and stress that we're putting into staff members, into teachers, into professors, into students, into even just like cleaning members. Like, they are the ones who have to clean after you, and they're going to be the most exposed, and they don't get paid well, and they're not going to get as much benefits as someone with tenure will, probably. So just from the numbers, I think definitely I appreciate that most of the classes are online. I'm going to say that. But I heard a lot of freshmen, for example, who don't want to miss on the college experience and that still want to come here, even though they're not going to have online classes. I heard a lot of students who don't want to be home anymore and they just want to come to Gainesville. And it's like, okay, I understand that you're definitely tired of being home, but I feel like Americans are very individualistic, and we have to start thinking more as a collective for the common good, like for everyone's good. And that is something that we're definitely seeing in Florida. So we'll see how it plays out in the fall. I don't know how it's gonna go if we have like an X amount of students sick, or if we have an X amount of staff members and faculty sick. But I guess we will see.
And what do you feel, the communication has been like so far from the university? Like, what are your thoughts? What have they communicated as it relates to the fall?
It's definitely been ambiguous and very brief. A conversation that I was having with someone after the what was it called, like the board of governors, where all the universities explained their plan. US plan seemed very ambiguous in comparison to other universities, in comparison to FIU, in comparison to FSU. And I've heard from other students in other universities that they've gotten better communication from their universities. And I totally understand that it's a difficult process, right? Like, we don't know what's gonna happen. Like, I imagine that UF didn't know that we were gonna have 1,500 cases this past weekend, but I just wish they were more communicative with the students, just because we're paying tuition, and that's another topic. Like, tuition hasn't been lower, even though we're gonna have online classes in the fall semester. And we are paying tuition, we're here, like, we're your students. At least be more empathetic with us. Just try to understand our situation as much as we try to understand yours. Like, every time we have an email, it's like the same information. It's nothing concrete. Like, I think the only concrete thing that we had was past 10th, July 10th, when we had the notification that we were going to have online classes and how is everything going to work. But before that, they said, like, you have to re-register for classes in July, and there was panic everywhere. And advisors were getting a bunch of emails just because there's not enough communication. And even then, when you work in UF, you see a lot of problems with the hierarchy of UF. And even like just working in a department, you see how many issues there are, because you can have a conversation with someone and have a conversation with someone else, and they're gonna give you different information about what's happening. So I just feel like we had better chains of communication.
Yeah, I'm sure that can be very frustrating and confusing to students. And so what I guess what would you say the consensus around like the feelings regarding the fall? I know you talked about like, a lot of first year students, but I know you're not a first year student. So what are other students saying? What are your friends kind of thinking as it regards to just coming back in the fall? Like, what are have faculty communicated with you all yet about, their expectations or their feelings about, because I know some faculty, have communicated maybe more than the university itself as it relates to what's going on.
So it was funny because on the 10th, when we got that email that classes were going to be online, two of my professors were sending emails as well saying like, it's going to work, this is how it's going to work. And I guess you have two different types of classes, like when you actually have to attend a Zoom lecture at a specific time, and the other ones that you just kind of work your progress. So professors were kind of explaining the difference between that and how their classes are going to work and if they have any questions. And I appreciated that because like, okay, I don't know you. And I feel weird just sending you an email out of nowhere. But the fact that you just kind of established that communication first and told me that I can ask you any questions if anything happens, I appreciated that. But again, that was like 2 professors out of 4 classes. So it wasn't everyone. And I guess it also depends on the school, the department, the professor itself. Maybe they didn't feel the need. When it comes to other staff members that I talked, I feel like they're scared definitely because they don't know how everything's going to work. They don't know how everything with their families is going to work. Some of them don't want to risk their lives, which is completely understandable. But we have to go through it, right? Like we have to keep our jobs and we have to just go through whatever UF is going to ask us to do, just because there's not much to say on this. When it comes to students, I haven't talked to a lot of them, so I don't know what their consensus is. I know that from just like Facebook groups, like a lot of them are just going to stay home, trying to sublease their apartments, figuring out like their online classes. And these are different, like I feel like when it comes to students, you have different communities, right? Because when we have the international students, and with ICE's decision last week, there was a lot of stress for them, and it was like, well, we have to come back to campus, we have to find online classes. So that was an extra stress that they were presented with, and they had to come back to class to UF regardless of the decision, regardless of how everything looks in Florida. And today the decision was backtracked, and I haven't heard from international students yet, but I'm going to guess that they're not going to choose risking their lives to come to UF if they don't have to. But I guess it depends on yourself. I guess it depends on like your decision. And also fraternities and sororities is another group. So they're trying to figure out how they're gonna host their events, how they're gonna recruit members. And UF did say that it was up to the sororities and fraternities to create their own plan to make sure that everyone is safe. And that's putting a lot of expectations on them, in my perspective.
So in thinking about kind of the groups, I mean, your university is quite large, and so I think that it's good to think about the student groups individually. And so based off of, and I know you self-identify as Latinx, and so that subgroup of students, have you noticed anything in particular that has impacted Latinx students more than other students on campus? Or do you notice Latinx students like yourself, maybe behaving in a way or acting in a way that might be different from other students in the general student body?
From what I've seen on social media, we're taking care of ourselves. I feel like we're more conscious of that. We're wearing masks, we're asking people to wear masks. And even with the current situation nationally, like not even just because of COVID, we are asking people to vote. We're raising our voices, which I think I haven't seen before, or personally, it could have happened before. But personally, I didn't see this much movement in this particular community as I see now. I've seen a lot of activism going around, especially in Miami, with their part, and even in Gainesville. Like there's a lot of things going on right now in the Hispanic and Latinx community. But other than that, I just can't say for sure if there's like any difference when it comes to coronavirus related to let's say, Americans, white Americans versus Hispanic Latinx.
And so, you know, you talked about, I guess, the increase in like the visibility of social movements. And so, have you yourself participated in any of the like movements or protests, or done any sort of activism during this time?
Physically protest, no. As I said, I'm a female, so I'll get very scared of going to situations that could put me at risk, like by myself. I don't have friends in Gainesville, like a lot of friends in Gainesville who would go with me to that. So I just chose personally to try to contribute to these movements from home on my own. So I just been signing petitions, donating money, and just kind of raising my voice and passing, like I don't have a big platform, but I can pass the information on the people that I know. So I've been trying to do that, support Black artists, support Black authors, and just trying to create the conversation in UF, like with everything that was happening with Black Lives Matter, with the I students. I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of staff members, faculties, and just kind of insert that conversation there and be like, so what are we doing about this? So what is UF decision on this? So that's what I contribute with, and to personally. But I've seen a lot of friends going to protests down in Miami and in other states, and it's just amazing, honestly.
And based on what you were saying about, you know, trying to support the movement locally through UF, you know, how was that? Can you describe that more? You know, were there specific, you know, protests that happened at UF? Were there, like, was it well received? Kind of how was that experience?
So in US, they did like a vigil for Breonna Taylor and other people who have been murdered by the police. And it's amazing. I think it's amazing because it stayed there. Like you can actually go and see it right now. And this was a couple of weeks ago. And it was from the pictures that I saw, it was a lot of people who attended. In 34th, there was a wall and they put all the names, and someone decided to paint it with blue paint and just go over the names. So there was a lot of people on Facebook asking for donations to kind of get the wall back how it was. And we have to remember, we're in Florida, we're in North Florida. So obviously there's still some level of white supremacy here of people who don't agree with the Black Lives Matter movement, who are straight racist or who are not anti-racist. But I want to believe that the majority of the UF community does support these movements, and does see like the white supremacy that we are exposed to. When it comes to movements itself, there's a couple of organizations that had been created or that already were created that are trying to mobilize more people, that are trying to raise their voices. And it's, I think, I guess for me, I didn't actively do the job of like looking for them when I should have, and that's totally my fault. But I guess like they're gaining more terrain right now. There's more Facebook groups. People are talking about this in their Facebook groups, like UF class of 2022, like they're talking about this. And you see a lot of complicated conversations in the comments. And with everything that happened to UF, like it's not a lie. UF has rescinded the offers to students who have been racist on social media. And that was like a whole thing that some people told me that they didn't expect UF to do that. And I think that was a correct thing to do. And when everything was happening, a lot of students were sending emails to UF, asking them to do the right choice. And I guess like that's when you see like Generation C is very, it's full of activism, to be honest. Like we can do what we can do, and you see that with TikTok, you see that with UF decision. So again, like on Facebook groups, I guess people are not scared of being blindly racist on social media, and they're not scared of UF doing anything about it. But it's definitely been something that someone told me that it's going to change UF. and how UF works about it. And we saw that in an email that UF sent saying a bunch of things that they were going to do, but then again, that's very conflicted because they say that they were going to end prison labor and they didn't, and they're going to keep using it for a year. So then there's a lot of mobilization about this. So yesterday, for example, Monday the 12th, no, the 13th, sorry, the 13th, there was like a call to action to start calling UF and asking them to end prison labor, and it seemed like a lot of students, a lot of Gainesville members were doing it.
Yeah, so do you remember anything else that, UF said that they were going to try to enact because of, the protests and movements going on?
There's a Gator Bait chant. That definitely caused outrage by people. And there's still people like who say like they're gonna sing it, even though we're probably not gonna have football season. And it's just like I feel like, not to offend anyone, but I think it's just like a stupid thing. Like, you don't lose anyone by choosing not to say this phrase, and you know that this is offensive to a group of people. So why are you choosing to still say it? And why do you think that you have the authority to tell this group of people that they can't be offended by it? Like, who do you think you are, basically? So US said that they were going to end that. We'll see how that goes when football season starts again. There's probably going to be some people who are going to choose to sing it in the stadium. So that was one of the things. The other things is that they were going to establish like a volunteer service community, something in the spring semester, so that people are more exposed to the Gainesville, like students, they're more exposed to the Gainesville community. They volunteer, they provide service. They said that they were going to create like a task force, if I remember correctly, just kind of help with Black Lives Matter movement. We trying to get more Black staff. And even I think something interesting that happened is that it wasn't only UF, but I belong to the College of Journalism, and within my college, they decided to have 3 town halls through the month of June. And the first 2, it was mostly just listening to students, listening to their experiences within the college, within UF, and just trying to see what recommendations the students had related to not even like Black community, but also Hispanic, Latinx, Asian. And I think it was great that the conversation started, and they said that they were going to continue with these town halls during the month of, during this fall semester. And they will send like an email saying like, this is what we're gonna do. So one of the recommendations was to create a task force to make sure that diversity is implemented. But there were a lot of conversations made about not having enough diverse people of color staff members, not having enough diverse classes, or even when you do have a diverse class, there's a lot of topics that are not being talked about, that are not being discussed. So I don't know, I can't talk about other departments, but as long as it goes about the College of Journalism, it was great to see them making that effort and actually hearing students on their experiences, and even faculty was there. So.
And for the purposes of other folks, you and I know the controversy around Gator Bait, but can you just explain that a little bit more? Because there's going to be people that maybe don't know the context.
So basically, Gator Bait. So the story goes, I guess, that white people, I'm trying to explain this in the most like simple way, but white people would grab Black children and use them as bait to attract alligators, gators, because gators will be hunted, like they wanted to hunt gators, so they will use Black children for this. And there's a lot of documentation about this. There's a lot of imagery about this. If you read the story, like it's really, I think it's terrible. I didn't know about this because I'm not from Florida, but I'm guessing someone else would know about this. So basically, when you're in the stadium, when Gators play in, I think it was in the 90s that the chant started, but it was like basically you called the other team Gator Bait, and it's a whole song about it and a whole chant. And but people for years, this is not something that is just 2020, but for years they've been saying that this chant is offensive to the Black community because of the story that comes from that. And people were saying that it doesn't matter because the chant and the story of it is not related, like the chant didn't start because of the Black children. That doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, the imagery that the chant gives to Black communities, to Black people, is not something good. It's not something that we should be perpetuating. And if we have the possibility of ending this right now, then why not? And then some people were saying like, why now? Like, why didn't we do this before if the chant has been in US since the 90s? But it's like, why do you care if we do it right now? If we don't do it now, then when? The important thing is that we're doing it right now. Should we have done it a couple of years ago? Yes, totally. Like we shouldn't have to have this conversation in 2020. But we're doing it right now. UF is doing it. So let's do it. I don't know if that explains like everything that goes along the chant.
Yeah, just some context, because not everyone will be familiar with Gainesville and UF, but so based on what you had shared, would you say that during this entire period, because not only has COVID happened, but we've had the Black Lives Matter movement as well as other social movements, and would you say throughout this period of time you've maybe received better communication from your college versus the university as a whole, or kind of what do you think?
I think they're in the same level. The College of Journalism couldn't say anything that UF wouldn't allow them to say, the same as other UF departments. I don't think that anyone, any department, any college was above the others. So yeah, I think that's just sad.
And kind of going back to the fall and thinking about the fall, has UF shared any, university shared any policies that they're going to put into place, or any sort of like new regulations that they're putting into place for people?
So the main thing is wearing mask. You have to wear a mask in every building that you're in, even in the dorms. Like if you're in your dorm, you don't have to wear a mask because your roommate is gonna consider your family in that situation. But if you go to the dorm bathroom or to the dorm common areas, you do have to wear a mask. Now, again, who's gonna implement any of that? Who knows? But you do, if you go to any hall, if you go to the libraries, you do have to wear a mask. You have to keep social distancing. When it comes to the libraries, there's going to be less people inside of them. So I don't know how many people there's going to be in each library. Depends on like the space and everything. But it's not going to be the same as before. When it comes to computers, for example, that we have in the libraries, you can't sit next to each other. So there's going to be some type of like distancing measures put in place in that. Again, with the libraries, you can pick up books. I don't know if this is going to continue during the fall, but when it comes to the summer right now, you can submit a request for books or materials that you want, and you can just pick it up. And it's very fast from what I heard and very easy. So you don't have like that much contact of having to go to the stacks. From what I know, the stacks are still going to be closed for fall semester. So I want to say that the pickup service is going to continue. Other than that, I think it's just social distancing measures. There's probably not going to be big gatherings, but they haven't said anything about that. They haven't announced anything about football season or other events like homecoming, Gator Growl, like stuff like that. And I'm guessing it's going to come as we start the fall semester. Other than that, they're just asking people to start wearing masks from now, like even in your hometown, like just start wearing masks, be conscious, because at the end of the day, you will be coming back to UF.
And how do you think that these new policies are being received by the students, you know, having to wear a mask, or you know, even the changes in what, you know, the student experience is going to look like?
I've seen a lot of students complaining about like UF being online, which is understandable. They wanted to have their college experience. Like even if you're a senior, you don't want to have your final semester from home, not being able to enjoy it. Um, and also at the same time, like problems with tuition, right? Like why am I paying for tuition? When it comes to social distancing, I've seen a lot of UF students going to bars, going to restaurants, not wearing masks, just being with like a large amount of people in closed spaces. And it's kind of confusing because I've seen some of them complain about the high number of cases in Florida, but at the same time, it's like you're not doing your part. I've seen a lot of students selling masks, which is great. You're building your own business, and at the same time, you're inviting people to wear masks. Um, there are a lot of UF masks, and I think that's kind of like the good thing about masks. Like I don't want to be like cynical with this, but you can choose the mask that you want to wear, so you can personalize it to your tastes and dislikes. As far as I know, UF doesn't have like any implementations of like you can only wear solid mask. As long as it's a mask that you can use, that is gonna protect you from others, that's great. But I I seen some people wearing masks in public. I guess it also depends on like the people that you're quarantining with. So if you have roommates, I guess you don't have to wear a mask around them because you've been quarantining with them. If you have friends that you haven't seen in a while, I've seen some of them doing social distancing. But I guess we won't see until it happens. And I think there's a little bit of scare of what about students who don't want to wear a mask? What about, because we've seen people in Florida who don't want to wear masks. Not, they haven't been students, but I don't want to generalize and say all of them want to wear masks. But I think there's a scare of like, if they don't want to wear masks, then well, what do we do? Like, are we gonna force ourselves to be put in a situation where we have to have a conflict with another person and maybe expose ourselves to COVID?
Yeah, that's definitely a real fear. And so have you seen the university and any communication or plan or anything that they've shared, you know, what that might look like? Like, is there going to be like any sort of enforcement? Are they going to get a hold? Has the university shared, you know, what happens if they don't comply?
From what I've seen, no. I haven't heard anything about fines or like as far as I know, you're just not allowed in the building, and that is it. I don't know if UF is going to provide masks. Like if you go to the building and you have your mask, then they're gonna give you a mask. I don't know if that's going to be the situation. I don't know who's going to be there to enforce this in any building. Like this is generally in UF. I don't know if there's going to be a security guard, if it's going to be a staff member, if it's going to be a student assistant. I have no idea because UF is very brief and ambiguous in their emails, and they haven't clarified like specific instructions on how everything is going to work.
So with a university of that size, right, you know, UF is pretty large. You know, how, if at all, has the university helped the greater Gainesville community during COVID? You know, have you seen them help? Because it does encompass a large part of Gainesville.
Like with the other like non-US students to say, like just the people who live in Gainesville.
Yeah, you can share, you know, students, but also, you know, the greater Gainesville community. I know you shared that they have the financial grants, but was there anything else that they did, you know, for students? Did they give out food? Did they you know, give out laptops? And then also, yeah, the greater community, because, you know, UF is quite large, and so did they provide anything to, you know, the greater Gainesville folks that might be impacted?
So as I say, when it comes to laptops, like they just gave the grants and the financial aid to students, and as long as they provided enough documentation, students were able to buy whatever material they needed to work from home. When it comes to Wi-Fi, I know that they provided some instructions on how to have a better connection. They did the fulltime pantry. I'm not sure that's the name, but the pantry that we have was offering pickup services. Now I think this is only for UF students or like for UF affiliated patrons, but they were offering that option of like you selecting whatever you needed and then just going and pick it up. When it comes to Gainesville community, I am not sure. I don't want to say no because I really haven't been active about it and like looking up what they've done for the Gainesville community. So from my experience, I haven't seen anything.
Have you seen any organizations or entities or nonprofits try and do things for the Gainesville community, since you didn't really hear anything coming from UF? Did you see anyone else in the community trying to support, you know, non-students that might have been impacted?
I really haven't. Again, I could be wrong. Like I am not exposed to everything Gainesville, but I really haven't seen. I'm trying to think, but I really haven't seen anything like COVID related with organizations related to UF. I haven't.
Okay. So I want to be respectful of your time. So is there anything else that you would like to share with me about your experiences with COVID-19 that I've not asked about yet?
Personally, now I feel like there's a lot of issues with other groups, but I feel like I've been one of those fortunate people who haven't been as impacted. I guess something to say, my brother is a doctor in Spain. And he was definitely exposed to it, so that was like another stressful situation for me. Just trying, like his wife is also a doctor, so just kind of have to go through the whole process of like, okay, I'm fine, but what if he gets it? And now at this point, it's like, well, they're fine because they've actually followed good procedures, and we are not. So he's able to travel, and I haven't left my apartment in 3 months. So.
Do you want to share more about that? About, you know, what your brother has shared with you about his experiences, and then maybe for the folks that are less familiar with, you know, what Spain has done, maybe can you share a little bit about that as well? Because you talked about the restrictions and policies being different, and now he's seeing the effects of that, and we're kind of still in it.
So as I say, my brother is a doctor, his wife is a doctor as well, but they live in Barcelona, Spain, and they work in 2 different hospitals. So when everything was starting, he told me that there were a lot of cases and that they were trying to rotate the doctors in the hospitals so they weren't as exposed. And he told me, I remember asking him that if there were any doctors who were getting sick, because it was at the same time when in the United States we were getting a lot of cases from nurses and doctors who were getting infected. And he told me that in his hospital it wasn't that many people because his hospital was small, but in his wife's hospital, which was a bigger hospital, there was a whole floor who was sick. And in his wife's group there were like 2 doctors and 1 nurse who were sick. So again, that kind of like, it was like, well, if there's so many people exposed to it where they're working, they're definitely gonna be exposed to it. And he kept calming me down. He kept just saying like, don't worry about it, like we'll be fine. And at that time in Spain, you couldn't go out. Like if you went out, it was like to walk your dog. It wasn't like going to restaurants or anything like that. It was like going to do groceries. Everything was pretty much closed. And they started having phases. It was like phase 1, phase 2, and I'm not 100% sure on like what each phase means, but basically it was just like different things would open. again, my brother and his wife were never infected with it that we know of. Of course, they could be asymptomatic, but that we know of, they were never sick. So like 100% grateful. A lot of the things that he shared, so he works in radiology. So he would show me like the RX and of just like the lungs of people. And I think it was shocking to see, just because even people who would be negative for COVID, their lungs look really bad. And you hear those stories. Like if you go on Twitter or Facebook, or if you just talk to a nurse, you can still see stories of people who, even after they recover, they have breathing problems because their lungs get affected so much. Like this is not a virus that only affects you once and that is it. Like you're fine. Like this can affect you in different aspects of your body, and for some time. So that's what he would show me. And I learned a lot of things just from talking to him, like the whole period of like incubation and when you can be contagious and all of that. But right now, since Spain doesn't have that many cases, I think they're like in the hundreds of cases. I think they went to like a beach today or something like that. So it's like, it's kind of sad because he can go. He's a doctor and like obviously he's taking precautions and everything and like doing the measures, and he's hard about it. But at the same time, it's like you can go to the beach, and I'm scared of just going to Publix right now. Just like even I think last 2 weeks ago, I read that some Publix employees were sick, like they were positive for COVID. So I was like, I'm not going to Publix anymore.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting, the two very different experiences, your brother in Spain and you here. And so did he share with you, or can you maybe share what you think as it relates to just the differences in the administration's responses? So the administration that's in charge in Spain, obviously their response, as you mentioned, was a little bit different. So can you maybe comment on how you feel the administration responses for each places was different, or you can just comment on our administration's response in comparison to how other countries have responded?
So I think when it comes to administration, like it's two different administrations, right? You have Trump, and then you have DeSantis, and even it's similar because they're following each other policies, but at the end of the day, DeSantis could do more for Florida, even if Trump doesn't want to. And as we've seen, I think the first time we saw Trump wearing a mask was like 2 days ago, which impressive, to be honest, that it's been 4 months of this, and that's the first time that he wore a mask. DeSantis was giving a press statement, I think yesterday, and one of the people who were there started criticizing him because we have 1,500 cases in Florida, and it's all because he hasn't put in place to wear masks. Like ever since we started, DeSantis said that he wasn't going to put a policy of mask mandatory. So it was up to the counties. So I think it was Tampa who decided to put a mask mandatory. Alachua County is the same, so you have to wear a mask if you're gonna go into some businesses. As I said, if you're gonna go to Publix, you don't have to wear a mask. But some other businesses are more strict about that. But DeSantis hasn't said anything about that. I haven't seen DeSantis, at least in the press statement that he was giving yesterday, he wasn't wearing a mask. He was making fun of New York when they were having a lot of cases, and now look at us. We have more cases than they ever had. There's people who are dying. And then on the other side, you have Betsy DeVos asking to have a school, for teachers to come back to school, to have children in school. And she says that children are not as contagious as other people are, but they still are. And even if they're asymptomatic, they're gonna bring COVID to their houses. And like it's a whole process. It's not only about the children, it's about the parents, it's about their grandparents. Like it's a bunch of people who are gonna get infected. And Betsy DeVos is not a teacher. She was not a teacher, and she obviously doesn't know what teachers go through. So talking about administration, definitely we should have a mandatory mask wear. We should have mandatory 6 feet distancing. The whole thing with the bars, like bars and restaurants started opening early, at least in Gainesville, and they shouldn't have. And I understand like all the facets of this, right? Like there's employees who need the money, who need to work, but I heard a lot of employees at the same time who prefer staying at home because they wouldn't be exposed to this. There's a lot of people who just, the whole Disney situation, like just to give another example, that Walt Disney opened and there were a couple of bloggers who definitely had COVID because they had the symptoms, like they had all symptoms listed, and they didn't want to go to the hospital. And Disney didn't do anything. They were like, okay, just go to the park. And that's to people who can, that we've seen this virus is very contagious. And we don't know if they're infecting Disney employees, if they're infecting other guests. And it's like, why is there such a need of go to Disney? Like, I understand if you want to go to the beach, if you want to go walk outside, like obviously you don't want to be in your apartment, but to go to Disney, spend this money, be exposed and expose others seems very selfish. So I think definitely the administration that doesn't want to put in place these policies, who just want to open, who just want to get the economy going, but at the same time is the people who are being selfish, like straight up. And in Spain, there wasn't a lot at the beginning. I remember there were a lot of policies that my brother didn't agree with because they didn't go with COVID. But as I said, they did close some things to the extent of people not going. Maybe people that are more conscious. I can't talk because I've never been in Spain, so I don't know how the community is. Spain is also smaller, so but you see in other countries like New Zealand, they closed, they waited, and now I think they had no cases or they had no deaths, and they're opening everything again. But meanwhile, we're here.
Well, thank you, Celeste, for sharing your thoughts and experiences. And I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted to share, anything else that, again, maybe we missed or maybe you really wanted to talk about.
I think I talked a lot.
Well, thank you again so much. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate your perspective, especially, as a Latinx student.